إلهي عظم البلاء وبرح الخفاء وانكشف الغطاء وانقطع الرجاء وضاقت الأرض ومنعت السماء وأنت المستعان وإليك المشتكى وعليك المعول في الشدة والرخاء. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أولي الأمر الذين فرضت علينا طاعتهم وعرفتنا بذلك منزلتهم، ففرج عنا بحقه فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب. يا محمد يا علي يا علي يا محمد اكفياني فإنكما كافيان وانصراني فإنكما ناصران. يا مولانا يا صاحب الزمان الغوث 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 أدركني 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 الساعة 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 العجاب العجاب العجاب. يا أرحم الراحمين بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Respected guests and viewers online, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, tonight is our second last night. Tonight's episode will be based around the time of the evening after the Martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam, with tomorrow night being the final night of Laylatul Qadr, being the 23rd night of the holy month of Ramadan. Inshallah, tonight I would like to call up to the minbar our dear brother and scholar Sayyid Muhammad Qadim al-Mudarrasi to begin with a short surah from the Holy Quran, followed by dua iftitah, and then inshallah our program will begin from there. Please welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بجلال وجهك الكريم أن ينقضي عني شهر رمضان، أو يطلع الفجر من ليلتي هذه، ولك قبلي تبعة أو ذنب تعذبني عليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك، وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها وهموم قد كشفتها وعثرة قد أقلتها ورحمة قد نشرتها وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده الظاهر بالكرم مجده الباسط بالجود يده الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة وغناك عنه قديم وهو عندي كثير وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك عن قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلما أرى مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك كأن لي التطول عليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على علمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله، ولا شبيه يشاكله، ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزة الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه، ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا عصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه. فكم من موهبة هنية قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني، فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد سائله، ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين، ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. اللهم صل على محمد. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا، وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى، وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمن والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم اظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق الحق بإذنك إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الخلق إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا فصل على محمد وآله وعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله وبضر تكشفه ونصر تعزه وسلطان حق تظهره ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. الله. Picking up from where we last left in the past night with regards to the rulings of Khums. We mentioned that you cannot choose a date to begin the Islamic fiscal year. The beginning of your fiscal year is the day that you receive your first paycheck. That marks the beginning of your fiscal year. Within the year, you can spend anything you like. Again, you can buy a car, you can buy a house, you can buy whatever you like. But whatever you don't use, the money you make and you don't use and you put it in a bank account, 1/5 of that after 1 year needs to be paid as khums. Now, if you did purchase things, but you didn't use them for an entire year, you have clothes, I don't know, whatever people buy, food, anything that you leave and don't use for an entire year, if these things, these goods that you purchased were purchased with money which khums had been paid for from that money, you don't need to pay anything. But if you didn't pay khums, you need to pay khums on whatever you bought and hadn't used for an entire year. Let's say you bought 5 pairs of jeans and you didn't use them for an entire year. If you bought these 5 pairs of jeans using money which had already been, the khums had already been deducted from that money, that's it. You don't need to pay anything. But if you didn't pay khums when you bought the 5 pairs of jeans, either you can give one of these pairs of jeans as khums away, or you pay the value of 1 pair of the jeans as khums. Now, in some cases, even if you had bought goods with money that you had paid khums for, you're still going to need to pay khums in that case. For example, if you bought bitcoins, now I give the example of bitcoins because it's very obvious. Let's say you paid $1,000. Actually, to make math a little bit easier, you had $1,000, you paid the khums of that, which was $200, so now you're left with $800. And you bought, with $800, you bought bitcoins a year ago. Now, after a year, although you had paid khums over the capital that you used to buy bitcoins, bitcoins have now grown exponentially. Now they're worth $10,000. Well, deduct the $800 that you paid for the bitcoins, because you already paid khums for that. Whatever value that you've gained over the past year, you're going to have to pay khums over that. Which means, whatever, if it's $10,000, you're going to have to pay khums of $9,200 when you deduct the $800. Now, two things I'd like to mention. Firstly, I feel like there's a common misconception that the scholars do not pay khums. That is not the case. Everyone pays khums. Khums is an obligation. If you have money that you have left over from a year ago, you're going to have to pay khums over that. However, in some cases, if you go to the marja or the representative of your marja, and he looks at you and he sees that you're someone who doesn't have to pay khums, you're too poor to pay khums, even if you have money left over, but you're not in a status to pay khums, in this case, he can write it off for you. Or he could give you a deduction. And I'd also like to end, inshallah, with this point. One scholar, he said that when I reached puberty, obviously, with other Islamic rulings, all of these apply as soon as you reach puberty. Salah, Siyam, Hajj, if you have the means. And alongside all of these, khums. So he said I had some money that I had received as gifts or whatever. By the way, khums also applies to gifts if you haven't used them for an entire year. But back to my story, he said that I had some money, and so I went to my marja and I said that I now have money that khums applies to. And so he said that I paid the khums. And then he said that it's like a tree. And if you ask anyone who's worked in agriculture, they'll tell you this. In the beginning of spring, you need to trim the tree for it to grow. He said it worked out like this. I paid khums. He said suddenly my money started to grow. And so inshallah, with paying khums, you'll notice that as with other funds like zakat, whatnot, when you give, inshallah, you'll gain even more. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. After the passing, the martyrdom of the commander of the faithful, أمير المؤمنين ومولى الموحدين ويعسوب الدين أسد الله الغالب علي ibn Abi Talib. His son Imam al-Hasan came out to deliver the news to the people. The way he delivered the news of the death of Imam Ali alayhi salam was unique. It was the equivalent of what you might call a press conference. The Imam came out. Naturally, you would have thousands of people waiting for news. The head of state had been ill. He has just been assassinated. He's been struck on the head. But he wasn't just the head of state. Imam Ali had a central theological position. He was the Imam. He was the successor of the Prophet. He was someone that the Kufans were very familiar with. And so thousands upon thousands had gathered to learn of any updates, any news. Imam al-Hasan came out and he said the following. He said, أيها الناس لقد قتلتم الليلة رجلا في الليلة التي نزل فيها القرآن. He said, tonight you have killed a man. Why the Imam spoke in the plural form as opposed to the singular? Why is he addressing the people and saying that you have killed him? We'll leave that for another time. We know for a fact that Imam Ali wasn't killed by just one person. Yes, it was one individual who struck him, but we know, if you pick up any Mafatih al-Jinan book, you'll find that one of the deeds of the 19th of the month of Ramadan is to recite this statement 100 times. Allahumma al'an qatalata amir al-mu'mineen. O God, curse, meaning drive out these individuals who killed Ali ibn Abi Talib from your mercy. Do not bestow your mercy upon these evil individuals. So it wasn't just one person, rather it was a conspiracy that was hatched by Muawiyah, who was the Imam's arch nemesis, arch enemy at the time. But we'll leave that for another time. Imam al-Hasan then said, listen carefully, he said, you have killed him on a night that the Holy Quran was revealed, number one. Number two, you killed him on a night when Jesus ascended to the heavens. Now, isn't it striking? Isn't it incredibly interesting that this night would also coincide with the Muslim lunar calendar that marks the ascent of Jesus? And it so happens that this night is also the night Ali ibn Abi Talib would be killed. In other words, those who tried to murder Jesus have an intrinsic connection with those who tried and successfully murdered Ali ibn Abi Talib. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, inshallah. The connection between Ali and Jesus. The connection between Ali and God's emissaries and prophets and messengers. So, this is also something that happened on the 19th of, or rather the 21st of the month of Ramadan. Number 3, the Imam said, وَهِيَ اللَّيْلَةُ الَّتِي قُتِلَ فِيهَا يُوشَعُ بْنُ نُونَ فَتَى مُوسَى. It is also the night that the successor of Moses was killed. Then the Imam said, he said, لَقَدْ فَارَقَكُمْ الْأَمْسِ رَجُلٌ. You have lost a man that is unmatched by the awwalun. No one is a match for Ali ibn Abi Talib. وَلَا يَلْحَقُهُ الْآخِرُونَ. And no one will ever be able to match the qualities and the virtues and the attributes of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now that's a very big statement. That's a bold claim to say that Ali was unmatched. Ali was and will continue to be forever and ever unparalleled. No one can be compared with him. Why? Because history has seen some great men and women. History has seen incredible, unfathomable sacrifices. People have come and gone who are paragons of human endeavor. We know of prophets and messengers who were truly unique in their own way, in their own respects. And yet for Imam al-Hasan to say that no one has ever in history and no one will ever be able to be juxtaposed with Ali ibn Abi Talib is a bold statement. It means we're talking about someone truly special. Ali was truly different from everyone else. We said last night that Imam Ali is oppressed. He is oppressed by his enemies for obvious reasons. He was oppressed based on the envy, the jealousy, the vitriol, the hatred, the disdain that they showed to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Because they were unable to match him, because they were unable to produce individuals that could be compared with him, because they were never able to be in as close a proximity to God and His Messenger as Ali was, they harbored this incredible malice in their hearts. To the extent, I mentioned a couple of examples last night, I want to mention yet another one tonight. Al-Albani is a contemporary Sunni scholar, someone who is highly respected, especially in the area of hadith authentication. If Albani says that this hadith is authentic, it is almost as powerful a statement and an authentication and a verification as Bukhari and Muslim. If Albani says that this hadith is not authentic, if this prophetic report according to Al-Albani is not acceptable, then it is thrown out the window. Al-Albani has a book that in which he compiled the most authentic of prophetic reports and hadiths. In it, there is this report. He says that one day a person came to Aisha and نال من علي ومن عمار. He set out to curse Ali ibn Abi Talib and Ammar ibn Yasir. We all know that Ammar was a lieutenant in the army of Ali. Ammar was one of Ali's foot soldiers. As great a personality as he was, Ammar was at the beck and call of Ali ibn Abi Talib. But because of his significant position, this person came to Aisha and started to curse both Ali and Ammar. How did Aisha respond? Again, remember the reference. Al-Albani says this is hadithun sahih. He started cursing Ali and Ammar. Aisha responded by saying, Amma Ali, as for Ali, I don't want to say anything about him. As for Ammar, don't say that. Because I heard the Prophet praise Ammar ibn Yasir. What does that tell you? What is she actually saying about Ali ibn Abi Talib? As for Ali, I'll plead the fifth. I won't say anything. But I advise you against cursing Ammar, because I heard the Prophet say that Ammar was sincere. Ammar always followed the truth. This is how oppressed Ali ibn Abi Talib was. There is a hadith which I want to remind you of. I'm sure you've all heard it before. But it's critical that we understand these things, brothers and sisters. I was speaking to a friend just the other day, and he asked me what I was up to, and I said to him, I've just finished compiling a book about the subject of why I choose to follow the school of the Ahlul Bayt, why I am a Shia. And he said to me, that's such a great topic, because I, as a Shia, if you ask me, I probably wouldn't be able to produce the evidence that satisfies this question. Why I chose to be, because let's face it, brothers and sisters, we all open our eyes in this chaotic world that's full of mayhem and pandemonium. And in this world, you have a plethora of avenues. You have contradictory claims. You have people in every corner saying, I follow the righteous path. I know the way to God. You have people who believe in God. You have people who choose not to believe in God. You have all manner of people, right? Ultimately, you need to ask yourself this question. Why this path to the exclusion of every other path? Why do I follow this religion and not that religion? And not one of an endless plethora of religions? That's an important question to ask. It's easier than you think to find an answer to this, by the way. Don't be confused. Don't be bewildered into thinking, well, that means I'll never be able to find out what the truth is because there's too many religions out there. No. It's much, much easier than you think. Because all you have to do is employ your intellect. Employ your intellectual faculties. And I can share an exercise with you, in fact. In the interest of time, I won't go into detail. But I'll give you one simple exercise. If you look at the major religions out there, what is their most obvious and most central claims? What do they actually tell you to follow? What do they tell you to believe in? Right? Is there a God? I think, at least for the vast majority of human beings in the world today, we can all agree that there is God. God exists. God was the one who brought everything into existence. This world could not be the result of some happy accident. You cannot have this order. You cannot have this complexity. You cannot have this incredible beauty, this vastness of the cosmos. You can't have all of this and say, no, it just came about by itself. Because you know what? We're adults. We don't believe in magic. So, if a religion tells you that there is no God, then you can easily dismiss it just based off of this simple intellectual exercise. I exist. The world exists. This world is a reality. We're not some thought experiment. I'm not some brain in a glass jar full of water. The world exists, therefore God exists. So, you can dismiss Buddhism, for example, because Buddhists don't believe in God. Right? Every other religion that says God doesn't exist, you can exclude them already. Then you go to the next question. Is God going to communicate with us in some way or another? If there is a God, and we know for a fact that there is, right? We know deep down, all it takes is a moment of retrospection. Therefore, shouldn't this God communicate with us? Shouldn't this God show us the way? Shouldn't He provide some kind of guidance? The answer is, if this God is this capable, this powerful, this wise, if our God is able to create the universe in its infinite vastness, in the complexity and beauty that it possesses, then surely this God is going to provide us with guidance. In other words, He's going to attempt to communicate with us in one way or another. Therefore, we believe in prophethood. So if there's a religion out there that says no prophets, no messengers, no communication from the Creator to His creatures, then those religions can be excluded as well. If there is a religion that tells you that God is anthropomorphic, meaning that God can come in the form of a human being, that religion can also be excluded. Why? Because my intellect tells me, my own conscience tells me, that the Creator of the universe has infinite knowledge, infinite power, infinite wisdom, infinite grace. He cannot possibly be confined by time and space. He cannot possibly be limited by the constraints of physical laws. It's impossible. Because for Him to be constrained by physical laws, for him to be even visible by the light spectrum, for him to be limited in a specific place on the space-time continuum means that he's limited. It means that he's not a God. It means that he is bound by the same physical laws that he created. Therefore, you can exclude any anthropomorphic religion or philosophy. Any religion that God came down on earth in the form of a human being can be excluded. Again, using the intellect. You don't even need to resort to any scripture, to any religious book. I remember I was at a church. I've used this example before. You might have heard it. And we had these debates with our Christian brethren, which lasted over a period of several months. And at some point, I remember the priest said to me, wonderful guy, by the way, super humble. He said to me, if you believe that God cannot manifest himself in the form of a human being, then you are limiting God. You're saying that God is incapable of appearing in the form of a human or any other creature. I said, well, let me ask you a question. And I don't mean to insult God or religion, or far from it. It's just a hypothetical question. You say God must be able to do anything, including become a human being. Can God be stupid? Because being stupid is to limit the intellectual faculty of God. Is that even possible? Is that conceivable? Can God be physically incapacitated? Can God have any form of deficiency of any kind? He said, no. I said, becoming a human being or appearing in the form of any physical creature that you can touch, you can feel, you can see, is a deficiency. You cannot ascribe a deficiency to God and then say that is from the power of God. The power of God cannot accept any deficiency. It cannot have any inadequacy. God can do anything, which means that God cannot be deficient, limited, or constrained by the same laws of physics that he himself created. So you can exclude those religions. What about the afterlife? Shouldn't we, living in this world, seeing all the oppression that takes place, seeing all the transgression, seeing all the death, pillaging, murder, bloodshed, carnage, all of this, shouldn't there be some form of accountability? The God, the creator of the universe, who brought all of this into existence, his justice demands that there has to be accountability. His justice demands that there has to be remuneration and punishment. His justice demands it. So, if a religion comes along that says there is no afterlife, like Judaism, for example, you can exclude that from the equation. So what are you left with? You're basically left with the religion of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, going back to Imam Ali, there's a hadith I want to share with you tonight that's reported by Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi. It's reported by Al-Khawarizmi in his Manaqib, meaning Sunni scholars. All of these are Sunni scholars. And of course, you can sit there and tell me, oh, this hadith, its chain, authenticity, try and drill holes in all of these reports because they don't serve your agenda. Of course you can do that, right? But if those who chose to sideline Ali ibn Abi Talib also reported these narrations, what does that tell you, right? There was a time when having the name Ali was grounds not for dismissal from your job, not being fired from your position, but to being imprisoned and even killed. To even have the name Ali. Imam al-Hussein said to the governor of Medina, his son, meaning Ali al-Akbar, was summoned to the governor. The governor said to him, what's your name? He said, my name's Ali. He said, you are Ali ibn Hussein? He said, yes. He said, Aliyun wa Ali? Don't you also have another brother called Ali? He said, yes, we're both called Ali. He went home. Imam al-Hussein told him, he said that? He said, Yabna al-Nabigha. We all know who you are. We all know your family tree. Wallah, if I had 100 sons, I would name each one Ali. Because it was a crime to be named Ali. So in defiance, the Ahlul Bayt would always encourage people to name their children Ali. Out of defiance, out of resistance. So, listen to this hadith. I gave you the references. The Prophet said, من أراد أن ينظر إلى آدم. I told you that I'm going to talk about the connection between Imam Ali and previous prophets. من أراد أن ينظر إلى آدم في علمه وإلى نوح في عزمه وإلى إبراهيم في خلته وإلى موسى في بطشه وإلى عيسى في زهده وإلى أيوب في بلائه وصبره وإلى يوسف في جماله فلينظر إلى علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد. Whoever wants to look at Adam in his knowledge and Noah in his commitment and Abraham in his proximity, meaning to God, and Moses in his strength and physical prowess, and Jesus in his asceticism, and in Joseph in his beauty, should look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. What that means, brothers and sisters, is that Ali is not to be compared with other mere mortals. Ali can't be compared to other so-called companions. If you're going to compare someone to Ali ibn Abi Talib, it would have to be prophets. I mentioned the hadith of Imam al-Hasan. He is unmatched. If you're going to compare him to anyone, it would have to be God's greatest emissaries. Then the Prophet brings these examples. He says, you want to get a glimpse of the knowledge of Adam, look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Let's draw a quick comparison here. What was Adam's knowledge all about? Let's refer to the Quran. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. God taught all of the names, meaning the great attributes of God. He taught them to Adam. Now let's take a look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali is the one who said, علمني رسول الله ألف باب من العلم يفتح لي من كل باب ألف باب. Ali is the one who said, سلوني قبل أن تفقدوني فوالله إني أعلم بطرق السماوات مني بطرق الأرض. Ask me before you lose me, for by God I am more aware and more familiar with the pathways in heaven than I am with the roads on earth. سلوني قبل أن تفقدوني. Ask me before you lose me. Let me share a story here. Ibn al-Jawzi was a 5th century Sunni scholar. Highly regarded, highly respected. He heard once that somebody was saying that Ali ibn Abi Talib was the only person who has ever made the statement and challenged people and no one could beat him. The statement is, ask me anything you want. Have you ever heard anyone say this? You can't even imagine someone, even the most lofty and the most knowledgeable experts in any field won't come and say, you can ask me anything and I'll give you the answer. Except Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that no one has ever attempted to emulate Ali. No one has ever said this statement. إِلَّا افتضح. They have been exposed for the imposters and the liars that they are. So Ibn al-Jawzi goes up on the pulpit. And he said, you know what? I can say it. I have enough knowledge. I can stand to be challenged. سَلُونِي قَبْلَ أَن تَفْقِدُونِي. Ask me anything before you lose me. A woman got up. She said to him, well, let me ask you a question. Maybe you can help guide me. Have you heard that when Salman, I won't go into details here, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with these things. When Salman died, he was in Madain. Madain is in Baghdad. It's on the outskirts of Baghdad. Ali ibn Abi Talib was in Medina. Medina is in Hijaz, so-called Saudi Arabia. Madain is in Iraq, in Baghdad. When Salman died, don't you recognize the report that says that Ali went from Medina to Baghdad overnight in order to bury Salman with his own hands? Isn't that true? Ibn al-Jawzi said, yes, that's true. How did he do it? It's a miracle. We don't know. We can't explain it. How Ali went from Medina and he was seen. There are multiple reports that it was Ali who came to Madain and buried Salman. Is that true? He said, yes. She said, well, let me ask you another follow-up question, if I may. When Uthman died, he was killed, popular revolt. There was an Egyptian crew that came all the way from Egypt. They were extremely dissatisfied with the corruption, with the oppression. They stormed his house and they killed him. When he was killed, his body was left on the ground in the cemetery for 3 days and nobody buried him. Even though this was in Medina and Ali ibn Abi Talib was in the same city. Is that also true? He said, yes, that's true. Uthman was left for 3 days in Medina. No one would bury him. She said, well, let me ask you this question. Shouldn't Ali have buried Uthman? Uthman, he may have been seen as a corrupt politician, but after all, as a Muslim, he should be buried. Why didn't Ali bury him for 3 nights, for 3 days? Ibn al-Jawzi realized the trap he was thrown into. He said, well, let me ask you a question. Did you leave your house with the permission of your husband or without your husband's permission? Because if it was without your husband's permission, then may God curse you. And if it was with your husband's permission, may God curse your husband for giving you permission to come out and humiliate me like this. She said, okay, can I ask you one last follow-up question? When Aisha left her home, in spite of divine injunctions, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, and she waged a war against Ali ibn Abi Talib, was that with her husband's permission or without her husband's permission? سَلُونِي قَبْلَ أَن تَفْقِدُونِي مَا قَالَهَا أَحَدٌ إِلَّا افْتُضِحْ. This is the knowledge of Ali ibn Abi Talib. إنها هنا لعلما جما لو وجدت له حملا. He would say to Kumail and others, there is knowledge here that I just don't have people who are ready to receive it. Read Nahjul Balagha, read the judgments of Ali, read how Ali would solve mathematical equations that were impossible to solve 14 centuries ago. Read how Ali guided people to the truth when all avenues were shut in their face. Read about the knowledge of Ali in his sermons. Read about the knowledge of Ali in his, subhanallah, I was at a conference a couple of years ago. I read a tradition from Imam Ali about the origin of the universe. Now, if I sit here among fellow Muslims and I share a hadith about what Imam Ali said, Kitab al-Sama' wal-Alam, how the world was created, obviously because I'm preaching to the choir, people might rejoice and say, MashaAllah, subhanallah, what a beautiful hadith, right? But that wasn't the context of this conference. At that conference, we had a professor from the University of Ontario, I believe, in Canada. I could be wrong about the name of the university. But anyway, regardless, a professor and a dean of the Department of Cosmology. He was in attendance because the conference was about the scientific achievements of the Ahlul Bayt. When I reported the hadith, I got back down. And by the way, the hadith is absolutely incredible. It talks about this infinitesimally small speck that contained all of the matter in the universe and how that split and expanded and whatnot. Again, a tradition of Ali ibn Abi Talib from 14 centuries ago. This isn't Stephen Hawking's. I mentioned the hadith and it was about Imam al-Sadiq, even though the report was from Imam Ali. I got down, the professor came to me, non-Muslim by the way, And he said to the group of scholars that were there, he said, this person that you just quoted, he was either a god or he was godly. He's got a connection with God. This isn't something you can just bring out from your own pocket 14 centuries ago. This is the knowledge of Ali ibn Abi Talib. وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ قُلْ كَفَى بِاللَّهِ شَهِيدًا بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَكُمْ وَمَنْ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. Asif ibn Barkhia had one letter from Ismul A'zam. Ali ibn Abi Talib had all 69 of them. I won't even begin to explore this area of the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib. من أراد أن ينظر إلى آدم في علمه وإلى نوح في عزمه. And the commitment of Noah. You want to know what the commitment of Noah was? Look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? Because Noah, the biblical Noah, had the kind of devotion and commitment to his job that was unmatched, honestly. I mean, he would preach and preach and preach for 300 years. And then God would extend his contract by another 300 years. Imagine like you have to do a job and then you're told that no, you have to do it for one more day. This isn't one more day. We're talking 3 centuries more. The Quran speaks about 950 years of preaching, of being a missionary, and not to friendly people, by the way. Traditions tell us that he would be beaten senseless to the point where he'd lose consciousness and he would be dragged by his feet. They would mock him like this. They would drag him by his feet in the streets of his town and they would make a mockery of him. Right? Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet says, من أراد أن ينظر إلى نوح في عزمه فلينظر إلى علي ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib did the unthinkable. Ali was the one who was told by the Prophet that they're about to come and hatch the biggest and most elaborate conspiracy to kill the Prophet tonight. 40 tribes have gathered. Each one is sending a delegate. Each delegate has a sword. They want to kill me with 40 swords all at once so that no one single tribe could be blamed for the murder of the Prophet. The Prophet says to Ali, I want to go. This religion has to be preserved. God's Prophet has to be protected. Will you sleep in my bed tonight? Imam Ali says that I responded to the Prophet saying that Sam'an wa ta'ah. I am at your service, O Messenger of God. And in my heart of heart, I wished that I would be mutilated by those 40 swords that night. I wish to die for the sake of this religion, for the sake of God's faith. Ali ibn Abi Talib's devotion and commitment to this religion. لولا سيف علي ومال خديجة لما قام للإسلام عمود. What he did, his services. Allahu Akbar. Moving on. ومن أراد أن ينظر إلى نوح في عزمه أو إلى إبراهيم في خلته. Whoever wants to learn about the proximity of Abraham to God, look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. Abraham's commitment to God, Abraham's proximity, Abraham's spirituality was unmatched. He's catapulted into the biggest man-made fire. Even his heartbeat doesn't increase by 1 beat or decrease by 1 beat. Ibrahim is told by God, you need to slaughter your son. Aye, aye, sir. He is told you need to throw your family in the middle of the desert and leave them stranded. Absolutely. At your beck and call. He is told to do whatever he is told. He doesn't ask any questions. He's told to jump. He asks how high. This was the proximity of Abraham to God. You want to learn about Ali's proximity to God? Read Dua Kumail. Read the munajat of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Wallahi tallahi, brothers and sisters, you want arfan, you want gnosis, you want spirituality, you want to gain proximity to God, don't go left or right. Go to Ali ibn Abi Talib, knock on his door, read his invocations, read his supplications. إلهي وسيدي ومولاي من لي غيرك هبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. Oh God, let's just say I'm able to withstand the heat of the smoldering fire of hell. How could I withstand being distanced from you and not being able to touch your generosity? I mean, honestly, there's nothing like this. إلهي أنت كما أحب فاجعلني كما تحب. Oh Lord, I am how I want you to be. I can't imagine a better Lord, a better creator. Then make me how you want me to be. كفى بي عزا أن تكون لي ربا وكفى بي فخرا أن أكون لك عبدا. Oh Lord, there is no greater honor than having you as my Lord. And there is no greater privilege than being your slave and being at your servitude. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Read his invocations to catch a glimpse of what it means to connect to God. Moving on, I don't want to take too much of your time. وَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَنظُرَ إِلَى مُوسَى فِي بَطْشِهِ. Moses was known for his physical prowess. He was known for being extremely well built, powerful, strong, right? The Quran even talks about striking this man, one punch and the guy falls dead, poor fellow. So the hadith says, you want to know what actual strength is? With all due respect to Moses, look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. فَاسْأَلْ بَدْرًا وَاسْأَلْ أُحُدًا وَسَلِ الْأَحْزَابَ وَسَلْ خَيْبَرْ مَنْ دَبَّرَ فِيهَا الْأَمْرَ وَمَنْ أردى الأعداء ومن دمر من هد حصون الشرك ومن شاد الإسلام ومن عمر من قدمه طه وعلى أهل الإيمان له أمر يا من قد أنكر من آيات أبي حسن ما لا ينكر فاسأل بدرا واسأل أحدا وسل الأحزاب وسل خيبر. Ask who was the undisputed hero in every single one of those battles between Islam and idolatry. In Badr alone, 70 of the top idolaters, these tyrants, the ones who had killed, the ones who had shed innocent blood simply because these people decided to submit to God, 70 of them were killed. 35 of them were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib. The other 35, Ali ibn Abi Talib participated in their killing. In other words, he helped those Muslims that were fighting them. This is in Badr. What about Uhud? What about Khaybar? Khaybar was incredible. We've all heard the stories. We've got some snippets here and there, but go into detail. Khaybar was the most fortified castle. The soldiers, there was treason involved. They had treaties with the Prophet. They turned against the Prophet, even though they had told the Prophet that you are Muslims, we are Jews, we're not going to fight each other. We're going to form a common front against the idolaters. But they went behind the Prophet's back. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the Prophet had to step in. History tells us that the soldiers who fought on the side of Khaybar were by far the most skilled and the most powerful. They had the strongest bodies, the best skill sets, the best fighting finesse. Ali ibn Abi Talib single-handedly. And the hadith is incredible, inshallah. We'll mention it tomorrow. I don't have time tonight. As to how Imam Ali was sent to go and fight. Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi says in his Mustadrak ala Sahihain, the Prophet gave a chance to the others. He called Abu Bakr, he called Umar. أعطى الراية لعمر. He said to Umar, take this standard, go. Let's see what you can do. Let's see what you're made of. He goes, quickly runs back to the Prophet with his men. يجبن قومه ويجبنونه. He's the commander, his men, and they start throwing accusations of cowardice against each other. No, you are the coward. No, you are the coward. When we know, when an army doesn't have a brave commander, what do you expect from the foot soldiers? Right? The Prophet gave them a chance. Eventually he said, no, I need to, you have to send a man to do a man's job. Right? You don't send children. I'll mention the hadith tomorrow, inshallah, because there are some important points in this particular report. My point is, you want to know about physical prowess, you want to know about the batsh of Ali ibn Abi Talib, read history. Open any history book about Islam and you'll get all you need to know. Finally, وَمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يَنْظُرَ إِلَىٰ عِيسَى فِي زُهْدِهِ. You want to know the asceticism of Ali ibn Abi Talib? I'll conclude with this. Jesus was known as an ascetic. Not as physically powerful as Moses, perhaps. I mean, after all, he was a vegetarian. Just kidding. You can still be strong as a vegetarian. Just not as strong as a carnivore. But the fact is, traditions tell us that Jesus was so incredibly ascetic, absolute disregard for the pleasures of this world, didn't even get married because he didn't want to be distracted from the worship and servitude of God, didn't have children, wanted nothing but to please the creator of the universe. Traditions tell us by Imam Ali himself that his food was vegetation that grew from the earth. His pillow was a rock. Allahu Akbar. Incredible descriptions of Jesus in our traditions. I wrote an entire book about this, showing how Jesus cannot possibly be known unless you go back to the reports of the Prophet of Islam and his infallible, immaculate household. Because the Jesus of the Bible is simply deficient. The Jesus of the Bible is missing. There's nothing about him except about 200 words or so attributed and ascribed to Jesus. The Bible is about Paul. It's not about Jesus. Right? You want to know Jesus? Get to know Ali ibn Abi Talib. He is the one who said, I'll leave you with this. Just think about this for a moment. He is the one who came out one day. He was the king. He was the emperor. 50, 52, 54 of today's countries were under his domain. He came out into the marketplace and he held his sword high and said, Man yashtari minni sayfi hadha? Who's going to buy the sword from me? فَوَاللَّهِ لَوْ كَانَ عِنْدِي ثَمَنُ عِشَاءٍ مَا بِعْتُهُ. By God, if I had enough money to put food on the table for my children, I wouldn't have sold it. Then Ali went back to his home. He took 30,000 silver coins and he brought them out and started handing them out to the poor and the needy. Meaning Ali had money. He had access to money, but he just never touched it because this was God's money. This was the public treasury and it had to be distributed to those who needed it most. And Ali deprived himself even though he had access to all of this. If I had enough money to buy dinner, I wouldn't sell this sword. And he said, Sayfun, this is a sword that I shielded the Prophet from so many afflictions with. You want to know asceticism? Come and learn at the doorstep of Ali ibn Abi Talib. I'll leave with this, inshallah. Tonight was a very difficult night when Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein went to bury Amir al-Mu'mineen. By the way, they buried him in a secret location. They lived in Kufa, but they buried the Imam in Najaf. And the location of the burial of Amir al-Mu'mineen was unknown for about 100 years. Almost a century, no one knew where he was buried until the time of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. When Imam al-Sadiq was summoned from Medina to Kufa, he went and identified the location and recited the first ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and people realized where he was buried. Why? You ask why the location was secret? Because Muawiyah had created such a toxic environment that there was genuine fear that people would come and exhume the body of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Exhume him from his grave. Allahu Akbar. Anyway, they buried the Imam in the pitch black darkness of night. They walked back. As they're going back, they come across this ruins. And they heard a sound, a noise. as if somebody was there. The report is out there. They say that they went inside to see if there was someone living in these ruins. They realized there was an old blind man who lived there, homeless person. So they noticed that he was extremely upset. They said to him, "What's wrong? What's happening?" He said that there was this kind and gentle man who used to come to me every night and feed me with his hands. But he hasn't come here for the last 3 nights. It's been 3 nights. I haven't seen him. I haven't heard from him. I don't know if there's something bad that's happened to him. Imam al-Hasan said to him, "Sifhu lana, describe this man to us." He said, I couldn't see him, but what I can tell you is that he had incredible kindness. He fed me like a mother would feed her child. And when he fed me, he would recite remembrance of God. He would say, "Allahu Akbar," and I could almost hear the walls of these ruins, the rocks, the trees, repeat after him, "Allahu Akbar." He would say, "Subhanallah," and it's as if the heavens would say, "Subhanallah," echoing his remarks. That's all I know of him. His generosity, his kindness, coming to me every night. I've been abandoned by everyone, but he would come to me. But it's been 3 days. Imam Hassan cried. He looked at his brother Imam al-Hussein. He said, "I think you are describing our father. Our father was struck 3 days ago. He was ill, and tonight we just came back from his burial place. We just buried him." The blind man screamed in agony and pain and mourned. And then he said, "Could you please take me to where you buried him? I can't bear to be far from him. I wish to touch his grave." Subhanallah, the relationship that the Imam had built with this man. They took him to the burial place. He began to speak with the Imam in his grave and cried to the point where he fell and was forever quiet. They went to him, he was dead. He had joined the Imam. They say, that report says that they buried him right next to Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, I say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you went missing for 3 days, and this man, this stranger, this homeless person who didn't even know who you were, he didn't know that it was the head of state that came to him and fed him every night. He couldn't bear to be far away from you. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, in what state did you leave Zainab that night? Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, how did your family, your children who knew you, how did they feel having lost their loving father? Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I know for a fact that when Imam al-Hasan and Hussein went home, they consoled Zainab. They offered her condolences. They comforted Zainab. They told her to be patient. They ensured that Zainab didn't feel lonely. I am sure they spent the night with her that evening. But I ask you, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, where were you on the eve of the 11th of Muharram when Zainab wanted her brother Aba Abdullah al-Hussein? She came out looking for him. She cannot identify her brother except with this sign. She looked for the location with most swords and arrows and spears. So many weapons that had piled up. She went straight to that. She started removing those swords until she reached the body of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. She looked at him. She still couldn't recognize him. She said something, فَأَبْكَتْ كُلَّ صَدِيقٍ وَعَدُوٍ. Everyone cried, including the enemy. What did she say? She said, أَأَنْتَ أَخِي أَأَنْتَ ابْنُ وَالِدِي. Is that you, oh brother, Ya Aba Abdullah? يا جدي قوم هذا حسين مطروح. لا لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Let us conclude with the dua. I was reading in a supplication which was recommended for after Salat al-Fajr this morning. A part of the dua is this: Oh Allah, we ask you for the one wish, that if this wish were fulfilled, the wish of all the prophets would be fulfilled. What is it? The return of the Savior, the return of the Imam. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والشهداء والعلماء والصالحين ومن مضى على ولاية أمير المؤمنين نهدي لهم ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
Brothers and sisters, that concludes the program for today. Just a quick reminder regarding tomorrow, inshallah. So tomorrow is the final night of the program, and the 23rd night of Laylatul Qadr, which a lot of a'mal are done on that night. So tomorrow, inshallah, the Sayyid will finish his speech a lot earlier. So the program will begin at 8:30, but he'll finish a lot earlier, in order to give us more time to read the 3 surah of the Holy Quran along with all the other a'mal. So please make sure that you're on time, as we will also try to start tomorrow at 8:30 precisely, so that we get the full benefit of the time that we have. Again, I'd like to thank all our online viewers and everyone that's attended to our program and supporting the program. Again, tomorrow will be the last night, so please bring family and friends. Let the last night be a lively one, because as narration state, tomorrow could possibly be Laylatul Qadr, along with the possibility of the past nights. But it being the last opportunity of the 3 nights, it's important that we take the full benefit of it, because obviously this time won't pass again for another year. For now, that's us from the Guided. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا، فصل على محمد وآله وعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجل وبضر تكشف ونصر تعز وسلطان حق تظهر ورحمة منك تجللنا وعافية منك تلبسنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.